Luce Irigaray's book, This Sex Which Is Not One, is a text in feminist theory and psychoanalysis challenging traditional patriarchal structures that define sexual difference and the representation of women in Western thought. In this collection of essays, Irigaray critiques the masculine centric models of psychoanalysis, philosophy, and linguistics, arguing for the recognition of feminine subjectivity and the multiplicity of female sexuality. Her work transcends the boundaries of conventional feminist discourse by engaging deeply with psychoanalytic theory, particularly the works of Freud and Lacan, exposing the biases inherent in their frameworks. Irigaray begins by problematizing the way Western culture and philosophy have historically constructed sexual difference, that women have been relegated to the position of the other, defined only in relation to men. Drawing on Lacanian psychoanalysis, she critiques the symbolic order which is rooted in the phallus as the ultimate signifier. This system marginalizes women, reducing them to a passive role as objects of male desire rather than recognizing them as autonomous subjects. In this context, the title This Sex Which Is Not One highlights the dual erasure of women, first as a distinct sexual identity and second as possess their own complex and plural sexuality. Irigaray challenges Freud's theories, particularly his assertion that women's sexuality is essentially a lack, defined by the absence of the male phallus. In opposition to this phallocentric perspective, Irigaray emphasizes the multiplicity and fluidity of female sexual experience. She employs the metaphor of the two lips to illustrate this idea, symbolizing the interconnected and non-hierarchical nature of female desire. Unlike the singularity of the phallic symbol, the two lips suggest reciprocal interaction that defies binary oppositions. This imagery not only disrupts the patriarchal fixation on male sexuality as the standard, but also offers a new paradigm for understanding female embodiment and pleasure. She also addresses the commodification of women in capitalist societies, where women's bodies and sexualities are reduced to objects of exchange between men. Drawing on Marxist theories of exchange value, she critiques how women are treated as goods within a patriarchal economy. This reduction strips women of agency, reinforcing their subjugation within the symbolic and material orders. Irigaray's analysis extends beyond mere critique. She calls for a radical rethinking of social, linguistic, and economic systems to dismantle this oppressive dynamic. Language plays a critical role in Irigaray's critique. She argues that the structures of language itself are inherently patriarchal, reinforcing male dominance and silencing women's voices. The symbolic order, governed by the phallus, leaves no room for feminine expression. Women are trapped in a system that renders them invisible or forces them to speak in a language that is not their own. Her writing style, characterized by its poetic and non-linear structure, is a deliberate attempt to subvert this linguistic dominance. By refusing to conform to traditional academic conventions, she enacts the very disruption she advocates, creating space for a feminine mode of expression that resists appropriation. The philosophical underpinnings of Irigaray's work are deeply influenced by thinkers such as Heidegger, Derrida, and Nietzsche, but she critically reinterprets their ideas through a feminist lens. For instance, she engages with Derrida's concept of difference to explore the fluidity of sexual difference, emphasizing that such difference should not be confined to binary oppositions. In a more dynamic understanding of difference that recognizes the specificity of female experience without subsuming it under male norms. Similarly, her critique of metaphysics addresses the Western philosophical tradition's reliance on binary logic, which privileges presence over absence, unity over multiplicity, and masculinity over femininity. A significant aspect of Irigaray's work is her discussion of the maternal body. She argues that Western philosophy has consistently devalued the maternal, associating it with nature and thus relegating it to a subordinate position. By reclaiming the maternal as a site of creativity and subjectivity, Irigaray challenges the dichotomy between nature and culture, emphasizing the importance of acknowledging the maternal body's role in shaping identity and subjectivity. This reclamation is not merely about celebrating motherhood, but about recognizing the potential of the maternal to disrupt patriarchal structures and offer alternative ways of thinking about subjectivity and relationality. Irigaray's vision is ultimately one of transformation. She advocates for the creation of a new symbolic order that recognizes and values feminine subjectivity. This new order would not simply reverse the existing hierarchy but would dismantle the binary oppositions that underpin it. By embracing multiplicity, fluidity, and relationality, Irigaray seeks to construct a framework in which women can articulate their own experiences and desires without being constrained by patriarchal norms. While she critiques Freud and Lacan, she also builds on their inking them to serve feminist purposes. For example, she reinterprets Lacan's concept of the mirror stage, which describes the formation of the ego through identification with an external image. Irigaray argues that this process is fundamentally gendered, with women being excluded from the symbolic order and thus denied full subjectivity. By exposing these biases, she opens up possibilities for reimagining subject formation in ways that include women as active participants. Critics of Irigaray's work have raised concerns about her reliance on essentialist norms of femininity, particularly her use of metaphors such as the two lips. Some argue that these metaphors risk reinforcing stereotypes about women's bodies and sexuality rather than challenging them. However, Irigaray's defenders contend that her use of such imagery is strategic, aimed at reclaiming female embodiment from patriarchal appropriation and creating a new language for articulating feminine experience.